I'm Saraya Wintersmith. Tonight on Greater Boston, how should cities and universities respond as pro-Palestinian protesters camp out on campuses across the country and here in Massachusetts? I'll talk to City Councilor Ben Weber, who says Boston got it wrong at Emerson College. Plus, Steward Healthcare, the company behind several Massachusetts hospitals, is now filing for bankruptcy. What does it mean for patients and the state's healthcare system as a whole? MIT has ordered protesters to clear out the pro-Palestine encampment on its campus, just days after students at Tufts removed theirs after their university threatened arrests, suspensions, and other sanctions over their demonstrations against Israel's attacks in Gaza and the school's financial ties to the country. The threat of arrests became real at some of the Boston area campus protests, like the one at Emerson College, where police arrested more than 100 people a couple weeks back. Their response drew plenty of criticism, including from City Councilor Ben Weber, who said, in part, no one should be arrested for expressing their political views, and if we as a city, in conjunction with universities, cannot find a way to allow for peaceful protests, we are in a sorry state. Weber is also one of 11 City Council members who voted in favor of a resolution calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire between Israel and Palestine this past week. Councilor Weber joins me now, along with Yawu Miller, co-founder of the Greater Boston News Bureau. Yawu, Councilor Weber, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Councilor, I want to start with you. Boston normally heralds itself as a leader on hard issues facing the world, but there's been an effort to get a resolution passed pretty much since last October when the Israel-Hamas conflict began. It's May 2024 now, and Boston's resolution follows those from Somerville and Medford and Cambridge. Why did it take so long, and what should the public make of the fact that it did take so long to get a resolution?
Well, I thought it was important that we address the issue, and in fact, it was one of the first things that I worked on when I joined the council in January. I think it's a very difficult issue, and it's something that the world's been grappling with, since October 7th, and we have a lot of different, groups here in Boston, and I think it rather, a difference here is that we had to address the needs of a lot of different groups, and it was something that took more time than in those other towns.
I know some local and regional organizations were vocally opposed to the resolution as it passed. What's been the response among your constituents?
Well, one of the reasons why I thought it was important to work on this is because I heard from my constituents, immediately after October 7th and once I took office. And, what I heard was an incredibly broad range of reactions. I heard from Jews with connections to Israel who felt like, their very humanity was being denied because the pain and suffering they felt on October 7th wasn't being recognized. I also heard from Palestinians who are my constituents as well, who felt like, their suffering prior to October 7th wasn't being recognized, and then people were not doing enough to stop the carnage, associated with Israel's actions in Gaza. So since the resolutions passed, I've heard, I think most people, the line they fall on, want to see an end to the violence in Gaza, and I've heard mostly supportive things. Some people don't feel like we went far enough. Others feel like we shouldn't have addressed this to begin with. But my personal belief is that I don't want to see what is happening in Gaza continue, and what little I could do as a Boston City Councilor was to help push for a ceasefire resolution on the floor.
We should note now that at the time of recording this show, we're hearing reports of Hamas accepting a potential ceasefire agreement. No word yet on Israel's response. And however one views the conflict, the tangential issues that stem from the conflict do directly affect city constituents. And in a town known for its world-class education institutions, that has meant protests on college campuses. After the council passed its ceasefire resolution, Mayor Michelle Wu came out with this statement, saying she supports a path for peace, return of hostages to Israel, and humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. Yawu Miller, in the last few weeks, she's canceled a scheduled appearance at Harvard after student groups withdrew support for the event. They were upset over her involvement in the decision to send police into a pro-Palestine student encampment at Emerson College. The mayor said that she and the police commissioner made that decision jointly. Beyond the Harvard cancellation, what's been the wider response to the mayor?
I think during the mayor's coffee hours in Rosendale and other neighborhoods, she's been accosted by some of the Emerson students who were arrested, others who were in support of them. I mean, I think people were upset at the level of brutality that the police unleashed on the protesters. People were taken aback. Some of the protesters were slammed to the ground. Some of the women complained that their hijabs were ripped off. There were injuries, hospitalizations. And, this was for a nonviolent protest. Presumably, the concern was, according to the mayor, that there were fire exits that were blocked by tents. The response, there in Emerson, arresting more than 100 students, at Northeastern, another 100 students were arrested. It's controversial.
I want to note that we have some video of the mayor being accosted at the coffee hour by someone who was involved in the protest. Take a look.
My body parts. We were screaming for them to stop. We were pleading for them to stop. They continued to drag us on the ground. My friend has documentation of him being strangulated until he was unconscious. I'm in a neck brace. I'm gonna have to get neck surgery. I didn't do nothing.
Do you see them power wash the blood off the streets after they beat the out of us? Did you see that?
Bloody knuckles from the gang unit? A gang unit. I don't see no riot. Why you have to have riot here? I don't know. Review the stuff. You do not care about refugees and Palestinians being genocided in their homeland. And if you did, you would have said some shit earlier. That's all I gotta say to you. I don't want to hear nothing.
This is a very general statement. These are very general.
I don't really care about generalized statements.
Councilor Weber, turning to you, you issued that statement on Twitter calling the increased police response to the protests in Boston and elsewhere, quote, deeply concerning. How do you feel about those words as you sit here now today and you're looking at the mayor getting some pushback for that decision?
Well, I think that I issued my statement because this was, I think, the second set of arrests of protesters, and I did not want to see escalated confrontations between, police and protesters across the country. I think that when you send in police to stop people from their engaging in political speech, you're going to end up, with violence like we saw, and I just hope we don't see any more.
Yawu, it's a hard thing to balance. It's even risen to the level of national politics. We have a video of President Biden just talking about the balance that folks need to strike.
We are not an authoritarian nation where we silence people or squash dissent. The American people are heard. In fact, peaceful protest is in the best tradition of how Americans respond to consequential issues. But neither are we a lawless country.
So what are you hearing from folks about how to balance that lack of lawlessness or the perceived lack of lawlessness with a First Amendment right?
I mean, I think nationally we've seen more than 2,000 students arrested with, in I think it was University of Texas, they were firing, rubber-coated steel bullets at protesters. There's been tear gas, pepper spray. It's an interesting contrast nationally and in Boston with other protests. For instance, back in the 1980s when people were protesting for divestment from businesses that were invested in South Africa, there wasn't that, students weren't getting arrested. In many cases, they weren't getting arrested. The shanties were staying up on college campuses for, weeks on end. And, there was discussion and dialogue around, divestment. And I think that that's happened at a handful of colleges. But, I mean, the police response is overwhelming. It's more reminiscent of what happened during Vietnam, which was something that didn't go down well in history. Yeah, I think nationally people are recognizing that it's almost as if there's a double standard. Here in Boston, the police are monitoring these pro-Palestinian protests. You're seeing the Boston Regional Intelligence Center. They released reams of intelligence reports to the Muslim Justice League. Yet, when in 2022, in the summertime, July 2022, when the Patriot Front marched through downtown Boston, 100 people with shields, they assaulted a black man. There was absolutely no police presence during that entire incident, and apparently no intelligence. It was as if even though reporters knew this was happening, the police didn't. So it's you can clearly see some double standards here.
Councilor Weber, I want to turn back to you and ask, what message do you want Boston to be sending to young people about getting involved in politics? And what response do you think would embody that best?
Well, I want us to send a message that we welcome, peaceful demonstrations and political speech, and it's not going to be, met with, with arrests, and we definitely don't want to see anyone get hurt. I think we just heard about Vietnam demonstrations. Watching in the early days of the arrests, this is before my time, but I thought about Kent State, Jackson State. We don't want to see anyone get hurt. But the other thing that also made me think of was how demonstrations in 1968 helped us wind up with Richard Nixon as a president. And we're heading into an important election. And I know that in Republican circles, they're all too happy to fan the flames of this, for their own purposes. And so, I hope we can learn from 1968, 1970, not repeat those mistakes today.
Yawu Miller, speaking of elections, I'm going to give you the last word here. What are the political implications, if there are any, for the mayor when she's looking at re-election in the next year?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say who's running against her. She certainly seems like she may have alienated some of the more progressive elements in Boston, but depending on whether if she has an opponent, a lot would depend on who that opponent is. It's, as you know, very difficult, if not impossible, to unseat a sitting mayor in Boston. So, it really remains to be seen.
Yawu Miller, Councilor Ben Weber, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, after months on the brink of financial collapse, Steward Healthcare is now filing for bankruptcy. And in a press conference today, Governor Maura Healey did not mince words when it comes to who's to blame.
That this situation stems from and is rooted in greed, mismanagement, and lack of transparency on the part of Steward leadership in Dallas, Texas. Ultimately, this is a step toward our goal of getting Steward out of Massachusetts.
The Texas-based for-profit chain says 8 of its 9 Massachusetts hospitals are still open and running. But what does this mean in the long run for patients and the state's healthcare system overall? GBH News Statehouse reporter Katie Lannan joins me now. Katie, you were there.
Yeah.
Getting reaction from officials today. You're a superstar. Thank you so much for being available today. What was the top officials' reaction to this news is like?
So I think, as you heard from Governor Healey, that there's, certainly state government not a big fan of Steward at this point after the uncertainty that's been created around their finances and what that means for Massachusetts. The governor has already called for Steward to leave Massachusetts, right? And she says that this is a step towards achieving that goal, that, ultimately things are going to look different when we're at the other end of the bankruptcy process. We don't really know how. There might be some disruptions, some inconveniences, and ultimately, Healey and other state officials, one thing they are watching for in the bankruptcy process is it could bring more transparency to Steward's operations, to their financial dealings, and that's something that the governor and others in the state, particularly in the healthcare space, on the healthcare side of things in state government, have been saying that Steward has not been providing them with the information they need.
To your point about the governor not being a fan pretty openly of Steward at this juncture, today in the press conference that you were at, she referred to them as a failed system.
We've got a situation where, this is a failed management team and a failed institution that has just incurred a boatload of debt. And that will work itself through the bankruptcy process. In the meantime, what will not change is that these hospitals will remain open. Patients should continue to access them for care.
Katie, let's dig into that a little bit more now. What does this bankruptcy motion mean for folks who get their care from Steward facilities?
The message that was really coming from Healey and the State Department of Public Health today was that if you go to Steward for your health care, if you see a doctor affiliated with Steward, that those facilities are still open, your providers are still working there, you should continue going there. They're remaining open, and part of this message is because, they don't necessarily want to see people flooding other hospital systems in the state that are also dealing with their own capacity and staff challenges. So the Steward hospitals are still here, they're still running. The state has set up a website and a hotline for patients who have questions. There'll be longer, medium term, the state officials will be working to ensure that Steward patients can get the care they need. They have they'll also have other efforts from advocacy groups such as Healthcare for All will be working on that as well. And longer term is the big question is, will these hospitals close? Will they transfer to new owners? Will there be further consolidation in the state healthcare system, which already is pretty much dominated by big chains? So in the near term, nothing changes for patients in Massachusetts. It's longer term that I think a lot of people are still having some questions about.
I want to ask you about what Steward had to say for itself. We have this statement from CEO Dr. Ralph De La Torre, who said the primary factor in the bankruptcy filing is, quote, due to Steward continuing to face challenges created by insufficient reimbursement by government payers as a result of decreasing reimbursement rates, while at the same time facing skyrocketing labor costs, increased material and operation costs due to inflation, and the continued impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. End quote. Katie, who's buying that?
Well, it is true that a lot of these challenges persist in the health system broadly. It's not just Steward. It's something we hear from the leadership of community hospitals all over the state. Who's buying it? Not the governor, per se, who did say this morning that she's glad to see that when it moves into bankruptcy court, Steward officials won't be able to lie anymore. She was responding to a part of their statement where they say they had to go for bankruptcy because a deal to sell their physician group was being delayed. Of course, state regulators say they don't have the documents they need to finish reviewing that deal between Steward and the other company that wants to buy their physician group.
Hence the statements about transparency and hoping that this brings greater openness. What does this mean for the laws in the state? I think in reading your reporting today, the legislature is looking at filing something.
Yes, the House is going to vote as soon as next week on a bill that, while it wouldn't necessarily change things with Steward, it tries to prevent similar situations from happening again. There's provisions in there involving, hospitals needing to own the land that their facilities are on, around both increasing data reporting requirements and bumping up the penalties for hospitals that don't comply. And it's also a broader look at how the state works to contain healthcare costs, which, you know, in 2012, Massachusetts passed what was considered at the time a landmark healthcare cost control law. It was on the heels of the Romney Care law that made healthcare coverage universal here. Then they came back and were like, we got to do something about what this costs people. And while, you know, parts of that law have been heralded as a success, really nation-leading effort, there's still, you know, anyone who has a prescription, who pays their health insurance bill, who needs a surgery knows that costs are still up there and a struggle for household budgets. So that's something, the idea of relooking at how the state handles healthcare cost control is something that has been talked about on Beacon Hill for a few years, but hasn't been able to get done. So this might be the impetus to tackle that.
And then how about the future of private equity investment in healthcare systems? Any word on what this might do for that?
That's something that has gotten a lot of attention at the federal level from both Senators Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren, who held a hearing at the Statehouse to look into that. They've both been harshly critical of Steward and the private equity transactions that have gone on there in the past. It's also something that lawmakers in the state Senate and really throughout Beacon Hill have expressed an interest in. I did ask a few weeks ago the State Health and Human Services Secretary, Kate Walsh, what she thought about that. And she wasn't speaking to any particular proposal, but she did say that she worries about acting in haste here because the healthcare system is both national, it's not just Massachusetts, and it's extremely complicated, that this is something that needs to be really considered as a move, all the potential consequences. So I don't know what we'll ultimately see done there, either on Boston or in DC.
And finally, any word about how the state plans to monitor the bankruptcy filing as it goes through process in Texas court, I think?
Right, in Texas. There will be legal representation from Massachusetts participating in those proceedings on hand there to make sure the state's interests are represented. You know, we're talking about 200,000 Steward patients in Massachusetts, 16,000 thereabouts jobs. So it's a big deal for Massachusetts. The disruption that could play out here could be big. And beyond that, there's still monitoring from the Department of Public Health and the hospitals. Attorney General Andrea Campbell is looking for any instances where leadership at Steward might have violated laws. So a lot of eyes, I guess, on Steward and what's next on all fronts.
You'll be there covering all of it. Katie Lannan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Saraya.
That's it for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Saraya Wintersmith. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Hey folks, Edgar B. Herwick III here from GBH's Curiosity Desk, where you ask questions and I find answers. Today's question came our way on Twitter from Emily Warden. Now, when I first saw this question, I was like, yes, that is so good. Microwaves do all sound the same. And then I was like, but wait a minute, do they sound exactly the same? I mean, I know they sound alike, but like exactly the same? Let's put it to the test. Okay, so I quickly got my hands on every microwave I could find here at WGBH. My apologies to James in accounting. I'm gonna set them all to 5 seconds, and then I'm gonna put them on in succession. We should be able to hear a bunch of tones at the same time. That should really give us a sense of if they are exactly the same or not. Yep, so they're all right there between a B and a B sharp. Not exactly the same, but pretty darn similar. And it turns out there is a reason for that. Popcorn. For decades, the same piece of technology was used in nearly all microwaves to generate that classic microwave sound, a little device called a piezoelectric buzzer.
It's essentially a membrane that vibrates and is electrically charged and vibrates to create a sound very similar to the way a speaker works.
Piezoelectricity was first described by Pierre and Jacques Curie way back in 1880. It is essentially an electric charge that can accumulate in certain materials when physical pressure is applied. That part piezo comes from a Greek word that means press or squeeze. Now the piezoelectric buzzer harnesses that charge to generate that simple beep. It was first brought to market by Japanese manufacturers in the 1950s and quickly proved to be a worldwide hit. Now on the one hand, they're pretty versatile, used not just in microwaves, but also smoke alarms and timers and all sorts of gadgets. On the other hand, they are extremely limited in what they can do.
We could set the frequency, but we couldn't do much more than that. The frequency and the length of that note was about all we had available to us.
This is why, for decades, nearly all microwaves have sounded the same. But today, it is a whole different ballgame. Thanks to digital technologies developed mainly for mobile phones, a veritable symphony of sounds is now available literally at the touch of a button.
There, so you'll hear that little beep at the end of it, but it's a lot more organic, it's a lot more musical, and it's a lot more subtle and nuanced.
This new world order does present some challenges. After all, that iconic microwave beep might not be spellbinding, but it is deeply familiar. Designers like Hughes have to come up with just the right combination of bleeps and blurps that says, hey, your popcorn is ready, just as effectively.
That's the main objective we're trying to accomplish, is communicate to you in a meaningful way and a thoughtful way that your task's complete.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, and perhaps most importantly, let me know what you are curious about, because as you can see, I might just look into it for you. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Stay curious out there. Oh, that was it though. See? That was it though. All right. You gotta go back. You gotta throw it a little bit back. That's the technique.
The Curiosity Desk is sponsored by Emerson College, inspiring curiosity and creative expression in all of us.
I'm Jared Bowen.